you win some and you lose some, as Penn State saw one of its top targets leave the state of Pennsylvania to go to Alabama, but at the same time was able to land a commitment from a player out in California. This just might be the new norm in recruiting.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Penn State gets a huge, and I mean huge, commitment. I don't want to necessarily say out of nowhere, but I can't say that we were initially expecting this one. And they win some, but they also lose some here. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Brian Smith is back, the Locked On's recruiting expert, also covers Auburn, Miami of Florida, Florida State Seminoles, and get you a holistic look at the national recruiting perspective. We are going that way because, because Daryus Dixson is from the state of California. So, wow, Penn State normally doesn't get a recruit this far away from Pennsylvania, but they get a much-needed cornerback. And Dixon, one of the best in the country, top 10 consensus national cornerback, has all the intangibles you're looking for. Brian, you've seen the film. You understand what kind of impact this player can have at the next level. And Penn State is able to land him over other contenders here.
Yeah, this is a guy that plays at arguably the best program over the last 30 years in high school football in modern day, just outside of Los Angeles. Bruce Rollinson built that program over like 38 years, and they've just continued to roll since his retirement. Dixon's a guy that's physical. He plays downhill, plays in an extremely polished defense. They have guys everywhere. He's used to success, and a lot of it he creates his own because you can't hide at corner. Plays best downhill, though. Like he plays a lot of off coverage and charges the football, whether it's a running play, whether it's a screen, short pass, whatever, and he's physical all the time. So I think he's a little more advanced in terms of his weight training and everything else for a guy his size. He's 185 pounds, but he just charges everything. So that mentality is what Penn State played with last year, Zach, and that's why they were arguably the best defense in the country. He's going to fit right in Happy Valley.
For Dixon, though, this commitment wasn't, I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't planned, but this visit was also a little bit last second as well. It wasn't one of the original scheduled visits. Brian, when you and I previewed this previous weekend here, Friday, June 7th, and we had the list of a dozen players that were going to visit and then other committed elsewhere. And then Dixon was added to this list. And again, okay, California prospect, hey, like never say never, but, we preface it and say it's kind of difficult to do. The only one that I can name off the top of my head here is Koa Farmer. And that was a player that played for Penn State in 2015, 2016, right? That was a long time ago when you had a California native play at Penn State. But what impresses me the most about this commitment, Brian, is the fact that Dixon's from the state of California, and as you mentioned, at a top-tier high school program, like the best of the past 2-3 decades. But he was being recruited by USC. He was being recruited by Washington. And Penn State beat those schools out that are coming over to the Big Ten, right? They're going to try to establish themselves. They have great, their offenses are stellar when it comes to passing the football. So Oregon, Washington, and not UCLA will get back there, right? They're going through some changes, and USC. So how does Penn State counter that? Well, they go into their territory. They go out to the West Coast, and they get one of the best defensive backs in this class of 2025 to counter those prolific passing offenses that are going to be coming to the Big Ten.
I think part of it is just these kids kind of look at it like, well, I'm going to be playing in the Midwest anyway. And modern day is set up for these young men to look at football a little more holistically. And if you go to modern day, there's a commitment that's different. The weightlifting, the way you look through football, the way you train for football. So a modern day kid going across the country and playing at Bama, Bryce Young did that for modern day, and so many other guys, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Florida, it doesn't matter. They don't look at it quite the same. But it is still a little bit of uncharted territory for Penn State. But this is also key for the following reason. Anytime a kid from that school goes to an unusual, that whole area in LA, I don't know what it's got, the greater LA area, 15, 20 million people, that's going to open up some doors. If you're going to get a player out of the blue, get it from that school. So this has bigger repercussions than just getting a really good football player. And he's top 100 probably in the nation, regardless of position. So it is a true recruiting win for the Penn State Nittany Lions.
And to take that even a step further, Dixon is a consensus 4-star, maybe could end up being rated a little bit better at the end of the day, but he becomes Penn State's best prospect in this class of 2025. And he also pushes Penn State's team ranking up. Rivals now has Penn State as number 10 in their 2025 class rankings. Now you win some, in this case of Daryus Dixon, you also lose some. Penn State not doing well in the state of Pennsylvania. So the best in Pennsylvania aren't exactly staying in Pennsylvania this time around for the 2025 cycle, as they lose out on another legacy recruit at that as well. We'll discuss that after a word from our sponsors on today's show. And this is a recruiting segment, so let's talk about the leaders in job recruiting. LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Now, LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but they might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not necessarily have the time to devote to hiring. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier, quicker, and more intuitive. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So be one of them. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's recruiting segment is also brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and so much more, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets. That's right, $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon, and add a big win to your summer bucket list. Now, if you go over to FanDuel.com right now, you can look at the NBA Finals lines. And coming up for Game 3, the Dallas Mavericks are down 2-0 in the series, but they are a 1.5-point favorite, minus 126 on the money line against the Boston Celtics with a total of 213. If you like any of those lines, you can bet them all right now at FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So yes, Penn State does land Daryus Dixon, but another highly touted 4-star recruit, one in Penn State's backyard, Michael Carroll. Anybody that's listened to this show, listen to Brian and I have these recruiting conversations. Michael Carroll was a high priority for Penn State, top of the big board overall, definitely probably the most coveted lineman in this class of 2025, not only because he's in state, he's a legacy recruit, but he's just rated, I mean, On3 has him as the #2 overall interior offensive lineman, and he's going to Alabama. So, like I said, you get some wins. This is a big loss. And, Brian, I think this is also just, it has interesting implications, too. Not only is Penn State not dominating the state of Pennsylvania because we had the same kind of attitude, tone, conversation about, hey, oh, they missed out on Zahir Mathis. Okay, fine. Ohio State. Matt Zollers. Okay, fine. You know, Missouri. Maybe it was an NIL thing. Who knows? We just saw the picture of him in the Lamborghini, right? The nice car, courtesy of Missouri NIL, right? And then you also lose Anthony Sacca, who was one of the top 10 recruits in the state of Pennsylvania. He's also a legacy. And now you lose Michael Carroll. I mean, Penn State's doing well. They're in the top 15, whatever recruiting service you look at for the team rankings. But Michael Carroll, to go along with Zollers, to go along with Mathis, to go along with Sacca, to go along with a lot of other recruits that just are looking elsewhere in the state of Pennsylvania. It's different when this is the drum you beat. So it's kind of odd to have this conversation. Hey, they're doing well, but they're not. their goals have just changed. I don't know if that's for this cycle, because I thought these prospects in Pennsylvania were really, really good this time around. So this is the year you want to dominate the state, but they're not.
I think part of it's NIL, and I think part of it is just kind of the landscape. I wrote an article today talking about how prospects from all over are leaving states that typically kids stay home, and they're going to random schools. State of Alabama just lost a corner, goes to Miami. Alabama kids don't typically leave. Does Alabama normally recruit Pennsylvania? No. They get maybe one a year, maybe, but historically not very much. It's just like that over and over again. Auburn just got a commitment from a kid from Oklahoma. They don't recruit Oklahoma. You know what I mean? It's just, so there's, it's a different mindset now. Part of it is smartphones and traveling and this and that. But I think the shifting landscape with all the different conference alignments and all that, kids don't really look at it regionally like they used to. As going back to Auburn, they've never really recruited outside of Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Penn State didn't really ever recruit outside of New Jersey, PA, Ohio, you know, kind of the DC area. They just got a kid from LA. So I'm not as shocked by things anymore, but like Sacco's going to Notre Dame. Like Al Golden knows Sacco's family. He played with his dad and stuff. It's at least a little connection there, but that sucks. You lose kids to Alabama at O-line that you really covet. That's a legacy kid. Those are just a little more personal. That's the only thing that bothers me as much. And I don't understand why, because Penn State staff is really good at recruiting. So there is some bizarre things happening in this class.
Yeah, that's a very good point, that just the changing landscape is going to naturally change recruiting. So, yes, because, I mean, look at that. The Big Ten is expanding to the West Coast. You get a West Coast player. The SEC, not necessarily expanding up north, but now Oklahoma, Texas, there's the rumor of, you know, anybody else. You know, Clemson eventually is going to bolt, right? And Brian, I actually do appreciate the correction there. I was thinking of his teammate, Cam Smith, who's another fellow linebacker. They go to the same school, St. Joe's Prep, and Sacco's going to Notre Dame, not going to Penn State. But Cam Smith, another top 10 player in the state of Pennsylvania for the class of 2025, is going to Duke. So it's like it's the same thing here. Penn State, there's too consistent of a theme where Penn State is losing top 10 prospects in the state of Pennsylvania for this 2025 cycle.
I don't know if I've ever seen this where a program is probably a top 10 school, traditionally gets a lot of respect in state. They have a good staff for recruiting, and yet kids are leading. Like all the things that you line up, you say, they'll get 6 or 7 out of the top 10 kids. They're not going to. It's very odd. And it's not like the state of Florida where you know, like Miami, Florida State, they don't even sign half the top 100 because there's just so many good players. Some of them are going to leave. Yeah. Pennsylvania has about 20 good players. Florida's got about 200. It's a different animal, but still this is bizarre. I'm guessing this is kind of the new norm with all the stuff we talked about before, but you know, the landscape of college football changing, you know, Penn State's got to change too, but they got Dixon, and that's a guy that's from LA. I've never spoken to you about LA recruiting on the Penn State podcast. I may not
never had to.
You know, I never spoke about Penn State with California recruits with anybody in my lifetime. So it's wild how it just changes so quickly. And the kid you think for sure you're going to get, you don't. And the same day, a kid you didn't even know was going to visit commits to Penn State. That shows you how wild it really is.
That is Brian Smith over on the other side. He is Locked On's recruiting expert for the network, also covers Florida State, Auburn, Miami of Florida, and gives you a whole perspective on the national landscape of recruiting. Truly is. We're talking about a California prospect on this bonus episode. We're going to have our regular preview coming up later in the week to preview a huge weekend of official visits for Penn State. So you think they're doing okay, they're doing better now, but this weekend is pivotal. Brian, thanks so much for the time, and can't wait to chat again in just a matter of days.
Thank you very much, sir.
And once again, thanks so much for checking out this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Be a part of the conversation. What do you think of Penn State football recruiting as they're getting prospects that they normally don't, but they're also losing commitments that they're favored in here? Be a part of the conversation down in the comments section. Like the episode, share it with friends and family. And if you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on YouTube in the free Fire TV channels app.